Welcome everyone to a very important edition of World Series News. Hands off our kids. This week, the TGA has announced that it has provisionally approved the Pfizer vaccine for children aged 5 to 11. This on the exact same day that the White House has announced to governors across the United States that they should get ready to vaccinate all children in the United States aged 5 to 11. As a matter of fact, the US government has now purchased enough vaccines for the entire US population of children aged 5 to 11, assuming 2 doses, double that number. This happens on the exact same day. Now, just for clarity, the TGA approved the Pfizer vaccine for adults earlier or later last year when it had only received FDA approval from the United States. It never even requested the data. So that implies that yet again, on the same day, it could not have looked at any data to provisionally approve the Pfizer vaccine for children aged 5 to 11. On Channel 9 News this morning, a doctor revealed that children are in fact not at risk of dying from COVID. How incredible! 36,519 cases in children below the age of 19 in Australia, and one death has been recorded in those two age groups, 0 to 9 and 10 to 19. We'll get into that story a little bit later in this edition. The Channel 9 doctor went on to justify jabbing children aged 5 to 11 because, in his opinion, according to certain data that's not available to the rest of us, that children somehow are very good at spreading the virus in their own homes. So whilst the child won't die from COVID, they might spread it amongst their home to their older siblings or their parents or their grandparents, who presumably have all been already vaccinated. And if you look at the statistics of vaccination in New South Wales today, this is an absolute truth, according to New South Wales Department of Health and the Australian Health Department themselves. Let's give you some of those numbers right now. So if you're considering jabbing your 5 to 11-year-old because they might spread it to you, who have already been vaccinated, this is how many people the government are telling us in New South Wales have already been vaccinated. If you're 95 plus and you're very old, well, 92.11% of you have had your first jab. If you're 90 to 94, greater than 95%. And in fact, all age groups from 60 up to 94 are all greater than 95% of the population of New South Wales, according to the Australian Health Department, have been first jabbed. 55 to 59 is sitting at 91.84%. 50 to 54-year-olds greater than 95%. 45 to 49-year-olds sitting at 90.23% first jab. 40 to 44-year-olds, 94.27%. 35 to 39-year-olds, 91.17%. 30 to 34-year-olds, 87.22%. And 25 to 29-year-olds, 82.92%. 20 to 24-year-olds, 83.08%. And 16 to 19-year-olds, 84.7% already. Last week, it was at 55%. I don't know where the government's getting these numbers from, but gosh, they're efficient at sticking needles into your arms. So if you want to look at second jabs, the lowest number there of any age group is 60.48% in 16 to 19-year-olds, and the highest rate is over 91% in 75 to 79-year-olds. So that's how effective the vaccination is already. But the government and the doctors on Channel 9 News are trying to tell you, the viewer at home, that your child needs to be vaccinated because they might spread it to you. Do you believe that? Or are the doctors finally pushing the envelope that little bit too far? Let's get into the numbers, shall we? Children aged 0 to 9, here are the stats. Males, 8,429 have been diagnosed with COVID, and females, 8,009, have been diagnosed with COVID. Amount of deaths in that age group to COVID? 0. Males aged 10 to 19 in Australia diagnosed with COVID, 10,219. Females diagnosed with COVID in Australia aged 10 to 19, 9,502. Total deaths in that age group? 1. Now, let's dig deeper into that one case of COVID out of 36,519 people who have been diagnosed with the virus in Australia. Let's find out a little bit more about this victim, shall we? According to the ABC, a 15-year-old Sydney boy who was being treated for pneumococcal meningitis as well as COVID-19 has died. The death has been confirmed by the Sydney Children's Hospital at Randwick, where the boy, Osama Sabu, was being treated. He was unvaccinated for COVID-19, was up to date with his routine childhood vaccinations. He was admitted the day before. Chief Health Officer Kerry Jant confirmed he had been diagnosed with COVID. This has been cleared by his family, she said. I can confirm that there is someone admitted to hospital that is 15 and that the cause of their admission, whilst they are COVID positive, is related to another health condition. The family has agreed that we can indicate that he has pneumococcal meningitis. Sydney Children's Hospital said that while he was a confirmed COVID-19 case, it was not the cause of his death. A teenager from Sydney's southwest has died after he contracted pneumococcal meningitis despite being vaccinated against it and COVID-19. Pneumococcal meningitis is a life-threatening infectious disease that causes inflammation of the layers that surround the brain and spinal cord. A spokesman for Sydney's Children's Hospital confirmed the boy died of meningitis and not COVID-19. New South Wales Chief Health Officer Dr. Kerry Jant said on Monday the teen had received a childhood immunisation against pneumococcal meningitis, but she believed a different strain had caused his death. She believed it. Very good, Kerry. As long as you believe it, we'll be safe. Over at Yahoo News, in their same story confirming the death of 15-year-old Osama, they have the subheadline in their story which reads, "Doctors worried about COVID-19 in children." The Australian Medical Association's Danielle McMullen said Osama's death highlighted concerns about the transmission of COVID among young people. We've been concerned throughout this Delta outbreak by the increased rates of COVID-19 in children and young people, Dr. McMullen told AAP. Given we don't have a vaccine for children under 12, our only way to keep them safe is to stay home and get these numbers turned around. In children, usually COVID-19 is a mild illness, but we can see some children get really unwell or suffer long-term consequences of their COVID illness. Thank you, Danielle McMullen, for your thoughts, because once again, no data supplied. It is just medical convenient opinion. The boy was 15, but she's telling us about vaccination for children under 12. Where's the connection? Especially when the boy presents with meningitis. So we have 0 deaths to COVID in Australia to children aged 19 or under. 0 deaths. And you are being asked now to vaccinate your children aged 5 to 11, not because they're at risk of dying from COVID, but according to the Channel 9 doctor this morning, because you, parent, who will be making the decision, at least for a little while longer, you might get the virus from them, even if you have gone out and been vaccinated, which covers, according to the stats, 90+% of you are already covered. So who of you at home are going to take your child aged 5 to 11 to a doctor and grant them informed consent to put a needle in their arm of an experimental medication with untried technology, provisionally approved on the same day that it was approved provisionally in the United States by the FDA, after the TGA has already admitted they looked at no data to approve the adult Pfizer vaccine because it had been approved by the FDA, and you're going to put that in your child? Let's look a little bit further, shall we? What did Anastasia Palaszczuk promise this week in Queensland? A brand new trial of GPs in schools, in 50 of them, so that children can get access to a doctor whilst at school, because it's difficult to get to a doctor, she thinks. Did you hear that? Your child can go see a doctor on their own at school without your permission in the age of vaccination. Now we need to look at something that is really, really intimidating, and that is, what is informed consent as it concerns implied consent, and at what age can that be given? And it turns out that in Australia now, if a medical officer deems that your child aged 12 or over is considered a mature minor, then they can grant informed consent all by themselves without parental knowledge. Are you going to wear that at home, mum and dad, grandparents, carers, and guardians, that your children who are in your custody, for whom you are responsible to write them a note if they are to attend an excursion to the zoo, or take hay fever medication orally, or to put sunscreen on their skin, but you're going to allow them to take a vaccine of unknown consequence just because it was told that it was a good idea and mandated by politicians? I don't think so. Please share this video far and wide, because it may be the last chance that any rational adult is going to put any media out there that is going to help parents get a judgment call on what is going on out there in this country. Now, in seemingly unrelated news, former President Bill Clinton was in hospital this week battling sepsis with antibiotics. CNN assures us that the president is doing well and may already be out at home. But for those of us who are watching very closely this unrelated news, perhaps the wife of the president may also be getting unwell very soon, as the case against Ghislaine Maxwell is due to be heard next month. Are you paying attention? Thank you for watching this very important edition of World Series News. Please share this far and wide. Our children's lives depend on it. Thank you.